fishing, it's in my soul.
Welcome to the Salt Strong Podcast, disrupting fishing entertainment as you know it. Prepare to laugh. Prepare to get to know fishing legends in a whole new and unfiltered way. And on occasion, you might even learn a thing or two about fishing. Here's your host, Joe Simons. Like diamonds.
What divorce can teach us about staying married? Hey everybody, Joe Simons, Like Diamonds, back again, Salt Strong Unchurched, talking about relationships today, talking about marriage. And regardless if you're married, divorced, or young or old, and in a relationship where you're not married yet, but hoping to get married or remarried, this is going to be very, very impactful. So I want you to go back in time and think about a time that you were in love. If you're married right now, hopefully you can think about a time that you were in love with your spouse. Or if you're currently in love right now, think about all of the fun and exciting things that happened during that period. Think about all the fun date nights and just how excited you are to text that person or to call them, or to, if you were in love many, many, many decades ago, to maybe write them a letter. Just think about all those emotions and that excitement, right? I mean, you were literally excited to be alive. You'd wake up early and all you could think about was that person. And I know it's still very vivid for me. I remember when I was kind of wooing my soon-to-be wife, I mean, I was just like head over heels. I mean, people would comment like, man, you got all this energy. I'm like, I am in love. And all I could do was think about her day and night. And if I wasn't around her, I was calling her and there'd be long phone conversations. And I wanted to know everything about her. And I was excited to date her. In fact, I wanted to make sure I was taking her on a date every single weekend so that no one else could, right? I mean, right? Smart people do that. I wanted to spend every waking moment around her. And yet all of a sudden something happens when we get married. And I am very guilty of this, which is why I'm doing this podcast. Thankfully, I'm not going through a divorce. But it could lead to that if you start forgetting about all of the things that put you in that place to begin with. And here's what I mean. What happens to so many of us, and we have a lot of excuses. I know I have them personally. You know, all of a sudden you have kids and a job and I'm running a company and all these things that prevent me maybe from taking my wife out on dates and buying her flowers spontaneously, right? And texting her out of the blue in the middle of the day just because I'm thinking about her, right? When was the last time that you just sat there and called your spouse or sent them a little love letter, right? I mean, we forget about this stuff. It's almost like we put it on the back burner, or just say it doesn't even matter because I'm married now, I'm stuck with him or her, right? And a lot of us have that attitude, and sometimes we even kind of kid about it to our friends or maybe on the side, right? That all the fun stuff and all the dating and all the romance went out the door when we got married, but it shouldn't be that way. Right. So here was a really eye-opening thing that happened. It was a conversation I had with my wife, and we were talking about one of our friends. It's a guy who was divorced a while back, and we ran into him, and he looked the best ever. Right. I'm talking like hardly recognized this person looked the best ever. In essence, got divorced, right? He did all the things wrong, meaning stopped paying attention to his spouse, stopped taking her on dates, didn't buy her flowers. The romance was gone, just way too busy doing things that are important to him, right? This is at least the perspective that we have on the relationship, and it's 100% true. And all of a sudden forgot about his wife, gave no attention to his wife, and even started letting himself go a little bit, right? In terms of, gaining 15, 16 pounds and just like, I don't really care. I'm married and it doesn't really matter. And then here's the irony, goes through a somewhat nasty divorce, right? And kids involved and all that. It's just never fun. And then all of a sudden says, all right, well, now I've got to go back to the dating world and woo another girl again. I want to get in the best shape of my life and look amazing. And right. And my wife's just like, well, gosh, I wonder if he had just done that to begin with and put a lot of extra work into himself, into his marriage, if he could have saved it. I'm like, obviously I don't know the answer to that, but I would hope so. And isn't it ironic though? We just get married, stay married for whatever length of time, 3 years, 10 years, 50 years. And then all of a sudden we go through a divorce and we're like, oh, well, gosh, look at all these things I've done wrong, and now I'm going to fix myself. And it's such a shame that has to happen, that we can't put an emphasis on our marriage and on how we look and how we're looking to our spouse and how we're acting to our spouse, why we're actually married, that so many of us have to go through this downturn of a divorce to finally put a focus back on ourselves to become the best version of ourselves. And it kills me seeing it. Kills me seeing what this friend, I'm glad he's actually taking care of himself now and looking good and probably doing all those fun things, with someone new. But gosh, I what if he just done that in the first place? And, I'm part of the C12 group where it's 12 different CEOs of all big companies, some really big companies. And a lot of the conversations turn to personal things we're struggling with. And this seems to be a common theme for me and most of the guys in there. It's just, man, how do you find the time? And it seems to be the ones that have the best relationships, they put it in their calendar to take their wife on a date. I just got done with one last night. I'm starting to get back into this. And let me tell you, it helps out tremendously. Happy wife, happy life. Everything in my life is better. My wife is just happy. She's giddy. I mean, girls like, and this goes for guys too. Everyone likes attention. Everyone loves to be loved. Everyone loves to get praise. Everyone wants to have a date night and have someone's entire focus, regardless if you're a guy or a girl. I found, at least in my experience, I don't personally need to have a date night every week, but I know my wife does, and it's incredibly important to her. And so we're doing that. We're doing some type of date night, even if we're so slammed and all it is just going out on the dock and having a glass of wine and just chatting with no kids around and just talking about life and exciting things that are on our mind. There is something really magical and special about that. And so I urge you, if you're having troubles in a relationship, go back to those times when it was great, when it was exciting, and rekindle that love, rekindle that excitement. You'd be surprised. It's not that hard. It's not that easy, but it's also not that hard, meaning you got to put time in. And that was the one thing that we all did when we were wooing our spouses. If you're married or if you're in that chapter of your life right now, you put the time in and you're excited to. We've got to get excited again as husbands and as wives to be around our significant other and remember all the good things, right? So many of us, including me, we want to nitpick on all the negative things. We all have negative things. And I guarantee your spouse could be saying the same thing about you and probably name off 5 to 10 things right off the bat that irritate the heck out of her or him. Right? We can do the same thing and it doesn't help. That doesn't help at all. That just leads into a downward spiral of you thinking about negative things about that person. You need to think of all the positive things, all the things that made you fall in love with that person to begin with. I also want to share these 3 simple ways to kill a marriage. I saw this recently on another podcast that I listened to on the relationship side called the Naked Marriage Podcast. They have some crazy topics on there, but this is a good one. It was 3 simple ways to kill a marriage. Number 1, put your kids before your spouse. And here's what I mean. The one relationship I just told you about where we ran into the guy, that was a situation where they had both put jobs ahead of the spouse, but also had put the kids ahead of a spouse. And a gentleman who I follow, I won't name his name because I don't have his permission, but someone who I've met and have kind of followed in the marketing and the sales world for some times. He went through a pretty bad divorce and then got remarried. And he was sharing some things that were just eye-opening to him. And the first thing he said was kids. He's like, I probably could have saved my marriage if I had put less of a focus on the kids, meaning I was always putting the kids ahead of my spouse to the point I gave my spouse no attention, right? Because I had to give my company attention. I had to give all these other things in my life attention. And then it was the kids. And I never had any time left. I was always exhausted and I literally gave nothing to my spouse. And he's like, here's what I've realized in my second marriage, because his kids are now older. And he's like, these kids, our job as a parent is to guide these kids, right? Is to lead them and to give them every opportunity to succeed in life and to tell them what's right and what's wrong and to show them the way. And then at some point, you let them go, right? Whether it's to college or whether they're getting married, whatever it is, if they're moving to another state, you have to let them go at some point. And the truth is what he said. He's like, by the time they hit 15, 16 and can drive, they don't want to be around you. And that's where a lot of marriages fall apart, is because we put our kids up at the very, very top, even above our spouse. And then all of a sudden they're gone, or they're teenagers and don't want to hang around their parents, or maybe even hate their parents. And all of a sudden you're like, well, man, my kids hate me and they're my number one thing. And I've kind of forgot about my spouse. I have nothing left. This kind of stinks. I want to start over. And that's why so many marriages fails, because we put our kids first. Put your spouse first. Kids are way down the line. I mean, think about that, right? Our job in those first couple of years, obviously you have to put your kids first just for survival. But at some point, once they hit those teenage years, your job is to guide them, to be there for them, to listen to them, and to give them guidance, and to hopefully and pray that they go the right direction. But at some point, these kids are going to be adults just like we were, and they are going to make their own choices with or without you. And they are probably going to not want to be around you all the time. And at some point, you better hope they have their own spouse and their own kids that they can do life with. And all of a sudden, they don't want to be around you. You don't have time to be around you at every single holiday. And that is when it's 100% important that you know who your spouse is, that you've had ongoing conversations, and that it's not just some kind of awkward, oh, okay, well, the kids are gone. What do we do now? I've seen it so many times as I've gotten older, and it pains me. You see people married for 30 to 40 years. It's kind of the time frame. And all of a sudden the kids are all gone, and that's all they knew was kids, and never talked to each other. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, who are you? I didn't know you were living here still. Right. I mean, I'm poking fun at that, but it's sad, but so true. So do not put your kids before your spouse. If you're doing it now, flip-flop that. Put your spouse first and then your kids. The next one, this is a tough one for a lot of people. I found, especially for a lot of girls, is putting your parents before your spouse. I will tell you, as a man, there is nothing more frustrating, that you're trying to do life with your spouse and trying to raise a family and trying to have a relationship, and all they want to do is talk to their mom. Usually it's the mother and or the mom and the daughter, or your wife and their mom, and they just want to spend every time, or sometimes it's the dad. But it seems to be in some relationships I've seen that have struggled. My friends, it's usually the female in this scenario that is just putting their parents way above their spouse. And it could be the same thing when you're asked to care for your parents, and you should, right? We hope that we do treat our kids well and give them everything that we can to succeed, and just really honestly to love on them, where if we ever do come to a position in life where we need help, that they're there for us. But at the same point, that can't be the only thing in your life. If you neglect your spouse, because once again, your parents in most scenarios are not going to be around as long as you and your spouse. If all you do is put them above your spouse and completely neglect that relationship, is a very good chance it will fail. So I think that number 2 is very critical. And the third one is kind of how I started this podcast, is putting yourself before your spouse, meaning, oh, it's all about me. It's all about my career and my job and me, and never making time for your spouse. If you can't remember the last time you took your spouse on a date, a nice date, then it's time to probably stop what you're doing, call him or her up right now and saying, I just planned an awesome date. We're going here this Thursday. No ifs, ands, or buts. And just watch what happens. Watch how the magic can rekindle. You'll be shocked. And we did this in our C12 group. One of the first times it came up, and I was guilty. I was like, man, I don't even remember the last time I took my wife on a date. And so many of us, we get busy with life and like, we don't need a date. We're already married, right? And that's the absolute non-truth. You have to date your spouse while you're married. And in fact, it's even more important, I would say, to date your spouse while you're married. You have to do that. This is the only way you can get away from all the noise and the chaos and the stuff that your kids and just life brings at you. And that doesn't mean you got to go spend a ton of money either. That's the beauty of it. We've had some of our best date nights just going out to the dock for a couple hours with a bottle of wine right? For $20, we can sit there and not even have to drive you. We don't even spend any gas. And we've had an absolute blast. We've been canoeing, right? Doesn't cost anything except, assuming you have a canoe, which we do. I mean, there's so many things that you can do. It could literally just be a walk, right? My grandparents were really good at that. It's just taking little walks every evening, right? I mean, there is something magical, and talk about getting to know someone and having a relationship. Maybe try that. Maybe not every evening, just once a week. Hey, every Thursday night, rain or shine, we're going to do it. We are going to take a walk together and just talk about life and what's going on. I'm telling you, it's a slippery slope when you stop talking to your spouse. It is a slippery slope when you don't make time for them and you neglect them. And we all know this, and yet we find ourselves getting in these ruts of life that all of a sudden it's been a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, where we really haven't had a sit down time with the spouse, and we really haven't, just put a lot of effort into it. As I mentioned from that very first person that we saw, ironically, after the divorce, now he's putting all this effort into making himself look good and be presentable and to be a good, date perhaps. And now is in the dating world, trying to woo other people and trying to create a lot of excitement. And I was like, man, I wish, he had just figured that out when he had his wife, because it was a very nice girl. And you hate to see families, torn apart like that. And sadly, it happens all too often. And one, it's, part of just society and kind of I would say some of the moral compass, just not all of it. And part of it is just, there's so much more stuff to do, right? I think way back in the day, the morals were a little bit differently, and it was so rare to get a divorce, back in the 40s and 50s, where you were almost like an outcast if you did. Now it's just kind of normal. Like, you're almost odd if you make it 40, 50 years, right? You're abnormal if you're able to stay married that long. Sad but true. And now there's just so much stuff going on in these smartphones, and we're always just connected and always feeling like we have to be doing something. So many times we put the spouse on the back burner, which is so sad. And it's very, very avoidable, as I found, now that I've been putting my spouse first. I'm not perfect. I'm trying to learn to get better all the time, but I will tell you, it has helped our marriage tremendously just by putting date nights. And so us, it's Thursday night. So every Thursday night we're doing something, regardless if it's just going down to the dock. There's been days where we're both crazy busy. My wife works as well. And we get home and we're just exhausted, and we still make time to do it, to get away from the kids. Some days it's, full on babysitter. Sometimes my parents will take all 3 kids and take them out of the house. It gives us an entire night to go do whatever the heck we want. And I'm telling you, those have become just more and more special. And I can feel it. My wife says she can feel it, that we are just closer. And in many ways closer than we were, that very first year or so of marriage. And that's pretty special, right? To ignite that type of love and that type of excitement. Your mind could probably wonder to where all that leads, but it leads to really good stuff and to a really fun marriage. Marriage should be fun. That doesn't mean it's always got to be awesome. It doesn't mean it's always going to be happy-go-lucky. There are going to be some times when it stinks and it's really, really tough. That's part of growth, right? That's part of growing as a person and as a husband, as a wife. But doggone it, it is very avoidable to not have to go down the path of divorce, and it is very, very avoidable to not make it fun. I mean, it was really cool how quickly just me putting her first and putting it in the calendar that we're going to have a date night every Thursday, that changed so much. And it happened really, really fast. It was just more flirtatious, right? Pinching my butt in the middle of the day, would you come home for lunch? I mean, that's exciting. That's fun. That's playful. It's the way we were when we were first dating. And it's cool to be doing that in our mid 40s now. So I urge you, if you're still listening to this and deep down that, man, I need to make a change. I need to put my wife or my husband first, and I need to give them a little bit more, or a lot more bit of time and attention. Just do it. Start small. Start with something. Hey, we're going to take a date this day, and just do it and watch what happens. Be laser focused, even if you feel like the love is lost. I've talked to some people where they're like, man, I just feel like the love is lost. I don't have a chance. You'd be shocked. Your spouse is just dying for some love and attention, and your spouse is just dying for you to just step up and become a better version of yourself, and to just give them some love and attention and some praise. So give it a try. Let me know how it goes. My email, joe@saltstrong.com. I'd love to hear from you. And if I missed anything, or if you have any other cool tips that have worked for you, let me know. I would love to hear them. Talk to you on the next episode.
'Cause fishing, it's in my soul, it was